product, and you guys can ask me anything you want. So, in case anybody wasn't aware, Pricelabs is a dynamic pricing engine and revenue management tool designed for boutique hotels, short-term rentals, hostels, anything from an apart hotel to an individual short-term rental, single-family home. We were founded in 2014 here in Chicago, which is where I am, but we've expanded considerably since then. We've now got team members all over the world. We price over, this I think is up to 250,000 listings a day in over 100 countries. So one of the hardest parts of being a revenue manager or having the responsibility of managing revenue for a short-term rental is that it's super time consuming. All of you, I'm sure, have gone onto a calendar and clicked on individual days on Airbnb to change rates, day requirements, adjust for holidays. It's a huge pain point to have access to the amount of local data you need to monitor what's going on, not only in your city, but also in that hyper local neighborhood where people will come to stay in your rental, and then adjust your rates and your stay requirements, not only based on what's going on now, but what you think is going to happen in the future. And that is where a tool like Pricelabs come in. So what we do is we take all of this data that we collect for you and give you the power to sort of automate what you're already doing. So it helps people increase occupancy, increase revenue, save time. We basically take the guesswork out of pricing for you. There we go. So how does a dynamic pricing engine like Pricelabs work? Well, we start with a base price. This is going to be like your average rate for the year, not really including events and holidays. Our system estimates a starting base price for you. So if you don't really have an idea of what your base price should be, we can help you with that. Take your base price, readjust it for seasonality. So these are changes in occupancy trends for your wider market. And then we take that and we adjust it for day of the week. The actual swing for day of the week will vary by market from market to market, but your Tuesdays are always going to be lower price than your Saturdays just based on travel trends. And then we adjust it further, adjust rates based on lead time. We reduce prices as they get closer in, and we increase them as they get farther out. And after that, we adjust rates further based on individual neighborhood demand. So say, for example, if you are not directly in the center of your city where all of the happening things are, but maybe 15 minutes removed, the patterns of bookings are going to be slightly different than a listing that's like dead center in kind of the happening spot. Some people prefer a quieter place, some people prefer a larger place, but things like seasonality, lead time, and day of the week are still going to be the same. In addition to that, we also adjust your rates for individual listing occupancy. So we take all of those automated sort of bulk adjustments that we would apply similar to other properties that are in your area, and then we adjust it out for the unique performance of your property. And you end up with a calendar that kind of looks like this, where each rate is optimized for the demand that we are seeing for that individual day at that time. And in Pricelabs, these adjustments are done and refreshed and recalculated every time a sync or save and refresh happens.
For one moment. So tell us a little bit about how much data you collect from what sources and for how long, so people kind of get a sense of, and obviously you have the algorithm, but the data that is informing your these pricing models.
So we scrape our own data from Airbnb, VRBO, and Booking.com. We are, I believe, still the only pricing provider that scrapes worldwide data rather than market dependent data. So we don't start with a city and sort of go out. We just scrape data everywhere, which is why we're great for really rural or remote or glamping and campgrounds. We have a lot of glamping and campground customers. You're not necessarily tied to a specific market when you use Pricelabs. You can pick a property anywhere in the world and we can price it. And what we do is it's kind of a long explanation, but we look at every single listing calendar every single day, and we check the rate and whether each day of the year or 2 years is occupied. And then we use that to, like, we have our algorithm and our logic things in place, and we sort of use that to calculate whether each day this year is sort of pacing ahead or behind of those days in historical years, if that makes sense. So we have worked in like 9 years of historical seasonality data for every
Perfect.
location in the world. We're adjusting for demand that sort of is outside of the norm for those historical averages.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. We also have a super great minimum stay logic. It's really detailed. It operates both dynamically and seasonally. So you can have your minimum stay rules like this in this example here set on lead time. So, you start out with your default and then sort of work out and closer in from there. Or you can apply similar rules, but based on seasons you've defined. So if you want a different default close and far out for your high and your low season, you have those abilities on Pricelabs. We also give you access to a lot of data and analytics tools, both at the individual listing level in your neighborhood data, the portfolio level with your portfolio analytics, and then you have access to our market dashboards tool, which is kind of like AirDNA's Market Minder, but instead of being sort of centered on a municipality or a zip code, you just enter an address and a search radius, and we have different size options, but we pull up to 10,000 listings within a bubble that you define, and then give you tools to filter and sort listings within that bubble.
We'll definitely hit on that after the presentation and kind of walk through how to use the market monitor. I mean, how to use the that tool, because it's really, really useful.
So we take all of that data that I described before, any rules that you've set on top of that. So with Pricelabs, you have the ability to not only toggle on and off different aspects of our algorithm, but set your own rules that either, like for Philly, for example, I know has relatively, I believe, strict short-term rental regulations. I know a lot of it is based on where the rental is, but I'm not sure if they have I feel like they have number of reservation restrictions as well. So you can set rules on Pricelabs to sort of automate what you are already doing. And then we gather fresh data, recalculate your listing occupancy, apply your rules, and then push fresh rates out to your property management system, channel manager, or OTA calendars once every 24 hours. So on average, property managers make more using a dynamic pricing engine. The percentage more is kind of flexible based on what they were doing before, but we found that somebody who's had a short-term rental and is using flat pricing for an entire year can make up to 40% more when switching to a system like Pricelabs than they were before. Frequently, people will set one base price, they'll leave that base price for a year, and they won't touch it. Using a system like ours can help you not only increase revenue with those higher occupancy percentages and higher daily rates, but also save you just loads of time.
Yeah. So just personally, before we started using Pricelabs, we comped before and afterwards, and it was over a 20% increase in revenue that we were making, which was absolutely ridiculous, because it's not just the revenue goes up, it's your profitability increases more than that percentage, because all that basically is drop down margin to you. So it's such a powerful tool, and it takes a while to learn, which we're sort of doing this here, but once you kind of figure out the rules, it really, really can help save time and make you more money. So it's, absolutely kind of essential piece of software.
These are some of our current customers. If you know them. And
Make it
then
art.
we
Go
do
ahead.
have case studies on we have a blog. So we have a bunch of customers of various sizes who have done these wonderful case studies for us that we post on our blog and on YouTube. Some of them are videos, some of them are written. Summit Cove is a great customer who's been with us for a really, really long time. So we've grown with them and have been their revenue management tool for several years.
Perfect.
And then some features about Pricelabs. We go over our pricing structure here, which is a flat per listing fee. We start at $20 per listing, but the cost per listing drops the more that you add. You only pay for the listings that are on. You only pay for the listings that are active and on, because even if you turn a listing on and it's still not active, we don't charge you for it. And we have really, really fantastic support. This is, I believe, up to 24/7 now, but not for chat. And then our response time has dropped to under 2 hours, which I think is stellar for a software company, honestly. Our response times and our customer service team is just so fantastic.
Agreed.
And these are our products.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any questions so far?
Fairly nothing so far here, I see. Maybe let's hit the market. Let's hit the market dashboard. So Aaron, your question, if you Google it, they took an investment from Summit Partners maybe a year ago. But it's all the owners are the ones that bootstrapped it. So that's the someone asked about ownership of Pricelabs.
Oh yeah, we're still owned by our 3 co-founders, and yeah, they're super active in the company. They sort of have each taken ownership of different aspects. So we have one who's like the data scientist guy, one who's the engineering guy, and then one who's the business guy. So and they're fun to work with. Right. So these are our market dashboards. So this is our market research tool. You have to have a Pricelabs account to access them, but you don't have to have active listings to get the market dashboards. They're a separate fee from the dynamic pricing service. But when you sign up for Pricelabs, you do get a trial to both products, both the dynamic pricing and the market dashboards.
Perfect. Could we do Charlotte? Would you mind if we did Charlotte?
It might take a minute to create one. Unless you want me just to like pull a random one.
If you wouldn't mind doing Charlotte, I know there's some folks here that would, very much. But if it's easier just to take an existing one, we can just do that too.
I can like steal someone else's.
Borrow.
So I can't
Temporarily
pick,
borrow.
yeah,
Go for
I
it.
can't pick like the starting location for those.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm pulling it up on a different screen. I don't know if you can see my.
So folks, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to continue to ask questions. Obviously on the deck, probably not as many, but here in the market dashboard and on the dynamic pricing tools, any questions that folks have, especially the folks that are live, now's your chance.
I have a question, if possible.
Sure.
Why is there such a gap between Airbnb's pricing tool and your pricing tool? I love yours. I think it's significantly better, but it seems like they would have a lot of data and everything just comes in super low. So I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are on that.
So from what I've seen, their logic is basically the opposite of ours. They charge less for high demand days and more for low demand days. I don't know why. I think it's because they're just trying to get more bookings on higher demand days, so they drop everybody's rates to get more bookings in faster.
Yeah.
And then on high demand days, or the low demand days, they jack up your rates to at least try and get you a higher value booking to kind of make up for that. But that's only based on like, from what I've seen of people's calendars using smart pricing. I don't actually know the logic behind it.
Yeah, let me kind of pick up there. I mean, Airbnb, their incentives are completely disaligned with you on this point here because they make money on the commission. So if you book at $100 or $120, it really doesn't matter very much to them. They earn their 20%. They'd rather you get booked to earn their commission. And fundamentally, it's a demand-driven platform. So they really care much more about the booker than the supply. So if they can get them a good deal and get them to keep coming back, they're going to do that. So that's why the smart pricing is such a poor choice for, you know, any operator out there that's trying to maximize revenue, because they're just not trying, like, it's not there to help you. It's there to get you booked, but at some very, very low rates. We tried that in the beginning, and you know, we're actually really happy. We're like, oh wow, 95% occupancy, it's great. Then we realized that that's actually not great. It means that you're way underpriced. So, you know, the kind of lesson here is like, you'll see a lot of people, you know, kind of brag about having, you know, 90, 100% occupancy. It's kind of how you get there that's more important. You know, if you're 100% booked out 3 months, you know, 3 months from now, like, you're just your prices are way too low. You want to obviously maximize occupancy, but do it in a very smart way that you're, you know, you're kind of getting the highest price on your highest demand days early on. And then if you cut later on, you know, you're filling in those weekdays, you know, very, very close in. So number of strategies to do that, but it's definitely an art here. It's a science and an art here for revenue management.
Yeah.
Got it. One more question for me. How often is Pricelabs syncing with Airbnb on an automatic level? I know it's good to like go in and agitate your prices slightly and whatnot, but just curious, if I were to not do that for a week or two, how often it would happen over that time span?
Once every 24 hours. Sometimes it'll be off by like an hour or two, but our system syncs rates once every 24 hours, but then we add listings to the sync queue randomly. So it can be 26, it can be 24, 22.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right, I think this is the best Charlotte dashboard I can find, although there aren't too many listings. But the other ones are equally small. So, is this kind of good?
Sure. Yeah, let's go through it.
Is this actually?
Looks small. It does look tiny, actually. 22K. Oh.
All right. So market dashboards at a glance. You basically, here, I'll go through the creation process because it's pretty fast. What you do is you give us an address. And a search radius. These bedroom filters are not standard, but we can add them to any account. So basically it's useful for larger cities where, like, if you just want to view the 1 to 4 bedrooms, it's helpful to limit the size of your dashboard, but give you a wider radius to pull in more of those bedroom listings of that bedroom category, filter out all the noise preemptively before creating your dashboard. So if it's something you're interested in, just email support and they'll flip on the switch to add these to your account. And then we show you your search radius. You don't need the exact address where you're looking. So if you know that, like, okay, I'm going to use my apartment in Chicago, but really I want to look out here in the suburbs, you can do that and just move the bubble and we'll adjust the address accordingly. And then we show you how many listings are in your bubble. And throughout this whole process, you can always go backwards and adjust until you're sure. So if we did want to go like super huge, also sorry, I'm a little shaky. It got really cold randomly. Let's go really, really big. We do have several different options for dashboards. So you can go really tiny with the 1,000 listing dashboard for $10 a month, all the way up to our 10,000 listing dashboard for $40 a month. But you get to pick, and you can adjust the size and scope of your dashboard until you're sure, and you give it a name and click generate. Once that's done, we start working on gathering all the data, creating all the charts. It can take anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes, depending on the size of your dashboard. And then you'll get an email when it's done. You end up with something that looks like this. Basics about the market dashboards. Your data sources are here. Right now, we're showing you Airbnb VRBO. We're working on adding booking.com short-term rental data and deduplicating the listings so that ultimately you won't have to filter through the different data sources. You'll just see one set of listings. This bedroom category filter will filter all of the data for the whole dashboard. It does not impact the comp set here. These KPIs at the top default to the past 365-day averages. You have estimated revenue. This is per listing. RevPAR, so your ADR over occupancy percentage, ADR, the number of active listings in your current selection. So this number is going to change based on what you do with this filter and what you do on the map. The number of bookings for the year, for the whole dashboard, the average booking window, and the average length of stay. You can change it to the past 30 days. I think these two are a little bit more useful than the yearly average. So what this is showing you is the past 30-day average of all of these KPIs compared to the previous 30 days performance. So you can see the change in booking window for the bookings that were made in the past 30 days. And then the same for the past 7 days. Below that, we have our map and comp set tool, which I think is probably one of the most detailed comp set creation tools out there. So with this, you can get really detailed on this map. You zoom super far in. And generally when I'm helping people create dashboards, I like to tell them to go bigger because of this tool, right? So on my Giant Chicago dashboard, we have like almost 3,000 listings. And if I had properties in multiple neighborhoods, I can use this tool to create different comp sets based on different neighborhoods. So even though I've got, my Streeterville River North properties, my Wicker Park properties, my South Loop properties, I just need one dashboard to help manage them all because of this comp set creation tool. Now, I know nothing about Charlotte, so I'm just going to follow this little square because that makes sense to me. So now you can see the number of listings has changed. Booking window has changed. No, booking window hasn't changed. I think occupancy changed a little bit. Now we can go over to our comp set creation tool and say, within that square, I want to find all of the 2-bedroom listings. That are hosted or that have more than 4.75 stars on Airbnb, more than 5 reviews, and okay, none of them have a hot tub, so we'll not do that. But you could do that if you wanted to. And maybe I am looking at condos. So I'm going to unselect all of the ones that say entire home. Because generally rental unit means condo. And if I want to check, click Airbnb, and it takes you to the Airbnb listing page. That looks like a townhouse. Once you're ready, give it a name, click generate. And then you can select your comp set from this dropdown. And it'll load all the data below based on the comp set that you've created.
How does this, how do we use this tool to help inform? And I know you'll probably get to this, but how do we use the tool to better inform our pricing decisions when on the dynamic pricing tool?
So on the dynamic pricing tool, so this is kind of an option for the dynamic pricing tool. We do give you like your own tiny comp set here in your neighborhood data. You don't get to choose these listings. These are just the 350-ish closest listings of similar bedroom category to yours. So like if you're a 2-bedroom, we'll go from 1 to 3 bedrooms. And we'll just try to look for the closest ones. Looks like we didn't pull in enough 1 to 3, so we went up to 4 bedrooms for this listing. And you can see them here on this map, the map and the base price help. What you can do is, if you really want to base your decisions off of the comp set that you've created, you can swap out your neighborhood data source or your market dashboard comp set.
Exactly. Yep.
So when you look in your future prices chart, you look at your occupancy chart, you can see, I don't know if I've actually created a comp set. I probably can. How you compare to like your chosen set of properties. Even if you don't choose to subscribe to the market dashboards, you can also use our compare competitor calendar tool. So if I stuck with this one, so now this is my comp set, the random properties that I picked, that are kind of walking distance, and you can see how my price compares to the 25th, 50th, 70th, and 90th percentile rates of that comp set, and then how their occupancy and my occupancy compare. Switching back here, if we didn't want to subscribe to the market dashboards, we give you a similar tool where it's a little bit more work. We have this compare competitor calendar tool. You can hover over any of the bubbles here on the map and get a few listing details. You can type in the listing name here. Just like the other map, you can click on these bubbles. Anywhere there's a bubble or a link that says ABB or VRBO, you can click on that to go to that listing's Airbnb or VRBO page. And then with this tool, we'll show you the next 365 days of rates and occupancy information.
So let me just pause here for a moment. So here's a question, like, what is the data most useful for? So, I think we talked about, you can kind of make your own comp set on Pricelabs, but for folks that are still researching markets, it's just a really good tool to go look for competitors within, once you identified a property, for example, you can use this tool to go. Airbnb has that function, but this will also pull up more comps and it'll help you kind of figure out your underwriting on revenue and on occupancy. So that's another use case for this, especially if you want to utilize this tool prior to having a property, before going live on your specific listing.
Before going live specifically, this tool is definitely super useful for figuring out like not only historical occupancy and revenue information, or like what you're going to set your daily rates at, but down here in the amenities and fees section, we also show you popular amenities for the listings in your comp set or in that area, and then desired amenities. So where the number of bookings outpace the listings with this amenity checked. So you can see where sort of more bookings are being made. And if you have this amenity, it's definitely a box that you should check off. If you don't have this amenity and it's easy for you to add, you should do it because this is something that people are looking for. And then down here in the policies and fees section, we show you weekly, monthly discounts, which are kind of handy, but really handy are the spread of cleaning fees and the types of cancellation policies that are being used by the listings that you've selected. And one thing that's changed sort of dramatically over the past couple of years are how people are not being as strict with their cancellation policies now. They're being a lot more flexible, and in those markets where we're seeing these flexible and moderate cancellation policies, we're seeing a higher percentage of bookings being made at those.
Yeah. The Airbnb, the folks I've spoken to at Airbnb and Vrbo, they all say that the more flexible you are, the higher SEO boost you're going to get. It's probably a combination of that, and also your conversion metrics are going to be a lot better, just because people are going to see, people are going to book those probably before, something that's strict or super strict. But that's a great, and this is a great data point.
Yeah, and if we filter down by like 1-bedroom category, you get a little bit better of idea of how cleaning fees and extra person fees are.
There we go. Perfect.
A little bit of a tighter spread, but not really. There are some markets where cleaning fees are just all over the place. I can understand why Airbnb is sort of like focusing on that now, because there are 2 bedrooms that are charging $180 for the cleaning fee.
They're probably charging $10 for like the room fee though, just to get people to, before there was that kind of trick to get people to book, but that's they put a kibosh to it. That's great. That's perfect. Maybe let's, just in, kind of 35 minutes in, can we switch over to the pricing tool just to give people your overview of it a bit more, and then maybe in about 10 minutes we can open it for questions.
Sure. So this is your basic pricing or pricing calendar. Usually when you start on Pricelabs, you land here on your dashboard, which gives you a great overview of your properties and kind of a snapshot of their performance. Sorry, my base prices are gone. Usually you see these too. So you have your listing name, you click review prices to jump down to your listing calendar. Once you start setting groups and tags, they'll appear here. Groups become really helpful when you're managing multiple properties, so that you can set like the same rules for listings of a similar type or in a similar location, or even if you just want to be able to like set date specific overrides, like you don't need to have rules set at the group level, but if you think that you might want to one day, or you want to set manual pricing adjustments to all of the same properties at once, groups make that really useful. Tags are a searchable, sortable text field that are just there to make your life easier. And then your minimum base and maximum prices appear here. As we went over earlier, all of our adjustments are made on the base price. So that's your important starting number. The minimum price and the maximum price simply act as stopping points between which the base price is allowed to move. These are like your main minimum base and maximum prices. You do have the customizations available if you need to adjust those for like weekday, weekends, or seasonally. These 15, 30-day, and 90-day numbers are my occupancy percentages. These are all test listings, so none of this is real. But if you hover over, you'll see the market occupancy for the same date range. And this is that same set of 350 listings of similar bedroom category. So you can customize these links based on either occupancy goals that you have or your common booking window throughout the year, or you can change them by season based on what sort of your property needs and goals are. Then this last synced column tells you the last time this listing was synced. And then this is basically your on-off switch for Pricelabs. If this listing is green, this is an active listing and we're pushing prices for it. So if we jump down to this single listing calendar, so you have my minimum and base set. Lots of people don't set a maximum price unless you're in some sort of like hyper competitive market situation where you have maybe like a condo in a building where there are several other short-term rentals, and you've noticed that rates never go above a certain dollar value. Yeah, all of our customizations appear here. When you edit customizations, we do have them at every single level. So we land on our minimum stay settings, which we do have a wizard. So for that same set of 350 listings, we take a look at their booking patterns. You tell us if you prefer short-term or midterm. Midterm is longer than 14 days. And then we give you recommendations based on what we see in that market and for that property size. You can sort of adjust and change from here. So if I wanted to say not take any one-day bookings, maybe unless they're orphans, I can do that. Or if I wanted beyond. Orphan gaps are unbooked days between bookings, basically. So an orphan period is going to be dependent on your minimum stay settings. Like this listing before had a 7-day minimum. So anything up to 6 days that are still open between longer bookings would be considered orphan on Pricelabs.
Perfect. Yeah,
But
this is a great tool, especially to automate, especially getting weekdays booked. So I highly encourage kind of folks, everyone to take a look at this and just make sure they implement it on your listings. Getting some of your weekdays booked is going to make a huge impact on your bottom line. The way that we've done it before is when we start, we'll use kind of suggested settings and then we'll monitor it pretty closely. And then, you kind of just optimize based on that, but it's a nice way to, and the base price too, but it's a nice way to just have a starting point because there are a lot of different settings here and it can get confusing. So it's a good way to just have something that makes sense. Obviously just review it as well. So there's something wonky going on there. And then just monitor the first 30 days is important. And then once you kind of have that, I probably have to look at it every single day, but it does take some time because every season's their character changes. So this is something that you really want to, this is one of those leverage points that if you can get this down, you can really jack up your margins from, mid 20s to mid 30s. It makes a huge difference.
Yeah, minimum stays. I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't really pay attention to is like the average length of stay and booking window of their market. A lot of people will just set that 2-day minimum and like go on with their lives. Having both the cascading and seasonal option, especially like even if you're in an urban area, you still have that high and low season swing. Like Philly, Chicago, New York, your summers are going to be busy. You can have the different cascading rules and different orphan rules to fit the seasonality and the booking patterns that you see for listings of your type. Because those like your 4-bedroom single family homes are not going to follow the same patterns as your 2-bedroom downtown condos. So minimum stay rules have the wizard, which is super useful. This general tab, automatically you'll see that all of these switches are off, which means all of our defaults are being applied. The default last minute prices and orphan day prices, we sort of tested with a wide range of properties and found that they really fit a lot of places. As sort of this post-COVID random weird booking period has come up, we are revisiting our last minute discount. So that's something that if you keep the switch off and you let our default apply, we'll adjust it eventually for you based on the patterns that we see in that group of 350 listings. Or you can turn it on and replace it with something that you think better fits your property. Beyond that, really a lot of people don't touch anything else. Some folks will set their weekend minimum. So you can say like for weekdays, my minimum is 170, but for weekends, I want my minimum to be 190.
That's a good one.
The minimum far out pricing, it can be useful to either dramatically drop your rates in the close term or keep them elevated outside of a specific window. So like If I wanted super heavy discounts to apply and maybe my minimum here was like $99 instead, I can put my 170 and 190 here and not use this one. So that in my close-in discounting period, my rates were allowed to drop super low. And then I would say probably 75% of Pricelabs users don't even come here to this tab. Some people like the demand factor aggressiveness, but that's just about it. Then I have some non-standard things on my test account, like the neighborhood data and the algorithm version, because that's kind of secret, but
Okay. Well, we'll have to have you on again for the super secret new algorithm that you guys are rolling out for just this group here. But you know, this has been great. Wanted to just kind of ask a question that I think a lot of people have. You know, what type of occupancy should we be shooting for? Should folks be shooting for within certain days? So, and before you came on, we're kind of talking, you know, first within 30 days, kind of what kind of occupancy should you be at within, you know, call it 60 days? What should you be at? I know it's going to be dependent on the neighborhood and the layout, but maybe you could just kind of walk us through what's a way to kind of triangulate there, if there are any kind of rules of thumb that we should be thinking about.
for sure. So yeah, it's going to be really dependent on like the average booking window for your market and your property size. Like I mentioned before, larger homes and like smaller condo units are going to see different patterns in that. So I would take the time to do the research using the market dashboard tool or Airbnb, AirDNA's market minder, or just looking through your own history. So like if you've been a Pricelabs user for a while, we have your portfolio analytics. We'll show you like booking window and occupancy by month or by week, things like that. Going forward from there, you can adjust both your occupancy-based adjustments, your neighborhood occupancy numbers, like those little colored bubbles on your dashboard, to fit where you want your listing to be. And then making sure that like if your goal is even just to be like 10% ahead of the market, you know, keeping an eye on what's going on in your area, because like having the expectation that you're going to be 50% occupied at 30 days when like in 30 days is February in Chicago might not be doable.
Well, you're getting some long-term listings there. The ad last year, excuse me, the ad last year's data is really good too, just to give a sense of, you know, kind of where last year was, and then you know, what it's kind of trending towards. If you could just kind of hit on that real quick.
Yeah. So this chart is really helpful for seeing where last year was and what this year is pacing like. We have this same chart on the market dashboards, but you can go backwards in this one, which I think is really, really helpful because it'll let you see whether or not we're actually hitting occupancy from last year in that market. So there are some markets that are pacing behind until we get to within like 7 days of the weekend or that date, and then they're hitting that occupancy that they saw last year. And then there are some markets, like apparently Charlotte, where we're pacing behind, and then we continue to be like 10 to 15% lower occupancy than we were last year. It seems to be like, it doesn't seem to be like market dependent. I probably should talk to Anurag about it because see if he's noticed anything, but like there's some beach destinations that are hitting that last year occupancy or exceeding that occupancy with shorter lead times. There are some urban destinations that are seeing the same pattern. And then the opposite is true, right? There are some urban destinations that are pacing behind where they were and they're not hitting that last year occupancy. And then there are some, let's see if this opens. Oh, I'm pretty sure it is. Most weekends are hitting or exceeding the occupancy that they saw last year. We think it could be like a business family travel thing, that there's this return to business travel and this return to family travel that we didn't see in that post-COVID kind of boom where people could finally escape where they were and go all over the place. Now people are back to the office, they're going back to school, they have to do that like regular conference travel again. We're seeing more like not just the traveling nurses that we saw during COVID, but then we're back to architects and engineers that travel for projects, lawyers, accountants, like those people who were working remotely that have started to go back to the office and are starting to go back to those like in-person business meeting travel things.
Yeah.
So
it's definitely good. Yeah, no, sorry to interject. Yeah, it's definitely kind of renormalizing to kind of some of those COVID trends. I wouldn't say it completely gone away, but obviously we're in some COVID heavy markets too. But this definitely started to normalize. I've definitely seen that in Philadelphia, which is why, I think the urban markets are generally going to probably, and I'd love to get your view on this and before we go to questions, but I do think that like the urban markets are going to, kind of get the benefit of that return to work travel, that conference travel. We're definitely seeing a lot more in that in Philadelphia. And I know for some of my peers in Chicago, for example, they're seeing that as well. Maybe just a few words on that. If you've kind of heard anecdotally or from data that that's the case.
No, for sure. We're seeing the same thing. So like a lot of return to office travel or return to that like normal business travel and those business travel patterns that we were seeing, which is like kind of why like urban markets are going back to being those like, well, during COVID, they got kind of like abandoned because nobody was going to big cities during COVID. And, I think Chicago never cracked like 25% occupancy during that whole COVID period. But now everybody not only is going back to those cities for recreational travel, but they're getting the benefit of seeing that like post-COVID business travel boom, and especially in like larger conference destinations like Chicago, Vegas, New Orleans has a bunch of conferences,
Yeah.
Nashville, Philly. So
Nashville's
like
a great market.
yeah,
no, it's gonna get your
Nashville has
weekdays
like
yeah, sorry.
No, it's that Nashville's a crazy market.
Yeah, if you can crack Nashville, it's definitely one of the really, really great markets out there. Well, thank you. This is fantastic. It's great. There's so much. I'm a pretty heavy user of AirDNA, but I use this as well. So kind of encourage folks to leverage this data tool. Don't want to kind of overload everyone, but there's some very unique things here, especially looking at how occupancy is paced today, in the future, and look historically. That's something that AirDNA does not have. Where here, I think you'll, if you kind of can utilize it together, you'll put yourself in a much better situation. So thank you again. So I know we have limited time, but let me go through some of the questions here, and then we'll open up for some Q&A. Let's see here. I'm gonna hit Joe's question first. He has some listings up and running. Says, and I don't know. Can you see it, Aviva? Can you see the question so I don't have to read it, or would you like me to read it for you?
I can see.
I can see. Okay, so I'm gonna hit Joe's question here. The 1 day gap between two reservations. What's the right setting there so you can kind of eliminate that gap? I think you kind of referred it to before, but maybe just point
that's
out for Joe.
the orphan day adjustment. So likely your minimum stay rules aren't allowing this orphan gap thing. And you have to set your gap length. So like my longest minimum stay is 3. And if I didn't want any orphan day, like 1 day bookings, I would take the one away from this orphan day adjustment. But with the length of gap setting, the length of gap will adjust the minimum stay requirement for any day based on the length of the gap itself. So it's a little bit confusing, but you set your gap range. So this is going for 1 day gaps, 2 day gaps, and 3 day gaps, even though it doesn't say 2 in this box. And then this setting here, length of gap, is telling the system for a 1 day gap, I want a 1 day minimum. For a 2 day gap, it's a 2 day minimum. For a 3 day gap, it's a 3 day minimum.
Perfect. That's a great explanation. Okay. Let's kind of keep moving on. Is there a way to filter listings by amenities and the revenue and what revenue? I don't believe so, but is there kind of get close to that?
On the market dashboards, there are.
Yeah.
You have to select them on the column filter. We don't have every amenity, but if there's one that like a bunch of people ask us for, we'll work on adding it.
Okay, cool, perfect. But it's not in the aggregate, it's kind of by listing, but you know, you can probably do some quick math to figure that out. So Aaron had a question, maximizing net profit margin and proper pricing elasticity. So I think maybe just to reword it a bit, you know, I guess what are some kind of easy ways to take a look at pricing elasticity? So, you know, where you're cutting maybe, you know, certain times where you're cutting prices at a certain percentage to hit the occupancy numbers when you're really near in. I guess, you know,
For your own listings?
like how do you maximize? Yeah, I think maybe like, I guess, Aaron, am I interpreting your question properly? Or if I'm not, please chime in. I'm trying to make it a little broader.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. If you can hear me, Michael.
We can hear you.
And that's the way I was thinking about it, is elasticity of pricing and how you maximize that elasticity to maximize occupancy and ultimately NPM. Doesn't necessarily make sense to have occupancy if you're not making margin, right? So
That you would probably find helpful information in your portfolio analytics. So we show you, I mean, your RevPAR is generally a good indicator of like how to adjust your rates to account for occupancy. But if you wanted to know like by what value, I would probably use a combination of I'd take a look at your RevPAR and then what your final booked rate was by month. Because this chart, sorry, this loads really slow. So here if we have like, let's say for 2023 in March, my ADR was 171, my RevPAR was 111. So my occupancy was relatively low. But if I wanted to see my final booked value for March for a particular property, you can come here to see what the actual, so those are my monthly averages. Let's see, adjusted occupancy and ADR here. And compare what this was to your base price and maybe make some adjustments that way. So that we can automate a base price closer to what you're actually booking at after you've made any manual adjustments and added any discounts. Is that sort of what you're looking to do?
yeah, I think that makes sense. I think
Okay.
I got in there and played with it, so to speak. I think the data is all there. So
Aside from that, I mean, you can see like, if you're looking for forward-looking information on your pacing charts, maybe see how your ADR is looking.
Viva,
As
are you
we get
able to
closer-
export this too are you able to dump it into a
Excel?
Excel or SQL or whatever?
Almost everything in Pricelabs is exportable as a CSV.
Awesome.
So they're not super obvious, but if you see any like little boxes anywhere by a chart, if a chart loads. Sorry, all of this is also fake data, so half of it won't make any sense.
Yeah, no, I like numbers, not pictures. So that's fantastic.
So yeah, it's usually hidden like in a menu somewhere, but you can download all of your own data from everywhere, like including your daily rates. So if anybody ever needs to log or chart their daily rates that we're pushing, with any, you can do it for all of your listings. So like you can click through individually from your neighborhood data to download a CSV of rates for an individual listing. Or if you just want a log of all of your listing rates at once, you can do that from the customizations page.
Got it.
So you don't have to click review and download.
Yeah.
Here, you can download a CSV of all your prices.
Got it. Don't want to waste everybody's time. I see the functionality.
All right. I mean, it just let me just hit a few more questions before we open up for some quick Q&A. I think there's just two more. Is there, Charles asked, is there a tool to gather metrics for travel purposes, vacation, healthcare, you know, business? Is there a way to, or is it maybe if there's not an explicit way, is there a way to, you know, kind of back into it?
Not that I know of. We don't have access, or at least not on Pricelabs. Airbnb does not share its search data, and I would think that that's more like a Google trend kind of search rather than, because like when you make a booking right on Airbnb, you don't actually say what you're booking for unless you tell the host.
Yeah.
So
exactly. Okay, perfect. And then the last question here I'll pull is actually, I think I might have hit all the, sorry, Aaron, a question. Just based on the aggregate data, are you guys seeing, you know, any conclusions that we can draw from the forward-looking data that that Pricelabs is collecting, you know, from, you know, what type of city, you know, I guess cities, layouts, zip codes, is anything that as folks are, you know, potentially looking at properties to acquire that they can, you know, utilize to, you know, make a better investment decision?
you can see our, like, before you even subscribe to the market dashboards, if you just wanted to get an idea of what's going on region by region, we have our world STR index, which just shows you like comparative data for locations around the world. From there, as far as urban versus rural market, oh, this is just like worldwide. I thought we had state level data. I swear we have state level data. Pretty sure I saw state level data. For urban versus rural market, no, we're working on reports like that, but we haven't really published any of it. We're trying to get better at it because we do have data. We just don't have the human bandwidth.
Yeah, a waterfall would be fantastic. Just like top to bottom.
We
Yeah, we
gotta hook up some AI, we gotta hook up some LLMs to your models and get those robots running.
I know we should
Well,
all
cool.
just.
Well, this is great. I think you know, folks know where to look, you know, homepage resources and can use it to poke around. I do want to just open, you know, I know we're kind of past 4 o'clock, but you know, I think David, you had a question. I'll let you go. If folks want to raise your hands, maybe we'll take max like 3 questions or 2 more questions. But David, if you want to ask your question.
Yeah. So forgive me if this was alluded to or gone into detail on, but earlier you had mentioned kind of an enterprise grade version of this. Are there different tiers or pricing models for the software? Or am I just completely missing out on that to get access to additional data points or anything like that?
Everybody gets the same thing. I have enterprise level customers. I'm just like an account manager almost, because nobody can like ever remember where the switches are for things. And so instead of, you know, having somebody who's managing 500 listings wait on the support chat, they just shoot me an email and I tell them. So it's nothing different than you're getting. It's nothing less like they even pay the same pricing tier that everybody else has access to. They pay the same for their market dashboards. Our pricing structure is so flexible that it works for everybody with one listing up to 1,500 listings or more, honestly. So it's mostly about like being a point of contact for somebody.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. Folks, any other questions? Okay, sorry, Cesar and Victor. Are you able to pull group party size data bookings in a market? So I'm guessing, Victor, if you want to clarify, just kind of what is the parties, or kind of party size that's the most popular, perhaps?
Yeah, like what's the booking, like generally what's the group size of a booking, like 5 people in a group or 6, and I think it helps figure out what's the best size listing that you want, like a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, etc.
Not by market.
Or maybe to rephrase, like, is there a way to kind of look at optimal layouts by market, or a way to
Yeah,
back,
that's
kind of
exactly
back into that?
Oh, well, here in like the historical section, you can divide all of this by bedroom categories. So you can compare, we're just looking at 2 bedrooms. So like within the market dashboards, you can view bedroom category data. So you can see these 4 bedrooms are doing well in Charlotte. They have higher occupancy almost every month, except for July and June.
It's perfect. We have some folks here with 4 bedrooms in Charlotte, so I think they'll be happy.
Good
to see
job.
that.
Yeah.
Great job, folks.
But it looks like the 1 bedrooms and the 2 bedrooms somehow are getting longer lengths of stay. So people are booking those longer stays in those smaller places, probably because they're like traveling nurses or something.
Perfect. Well, this is great. Yeah, I think this is a great endpoint for the conversation. Yeah, I think there's a lot here, folks, that you can dig into. Once you've, I guess, either at the ideation phase where you're looking at specific markets, probably good to have a few in mind, and then really digging into some of this data here to figure out optimal layout, and then obviously this has the ADR, occupancy, revenue data, and a good way to just kind of back check your work from AirDNA. But this this is a little more labor intensive, but if you are if you have time and have the analytical tools, this is a very, very good complement to continue to validate some of the markets and the properties that we're looking at. So with that, Aviva, thank you very much for joining us. If folks have questions, what's the best way to reach out to you?
You can email me. I'm aviva@pricelabs.com.
Cool, perfect. I'll post that into the group Discord.
Awesome.
But thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate you doing this for us here.
Anytime.
I haven't had a review in a long time, so actually there's some new things that's open on my eyes. So just to see the evolution of the platform it's been great. So thank you so much.
Cool. Yeah, shoot me an email if you ever want to go over things.
Perfect. Have a great rest of the day. Thanks, folks. Thank you
too.
everyone for joining.
Bye, guys.